following episode contains conversations that might not be suitable for all audiences. In this episode, we cover topics that might trigger an emotional response. Your well-being is important to us, so if topics like abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault, emotional abuse are triggering to you, this might not be the episode for you to listen to, and that's all right. It is vital that we together normalize asking for help. If you're thinking about suicide, or worried about a friend or loved one, or would like the emotional support, the Crisis Hotline is available 24/7 all across the United States. 1-800-273-8255. Again, if you need the help or someone to talk to, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is available 24/7. If you are a victim of domestic violence, or if you are in a situation where you do not feel safe, help is available. You can speak with somebody today. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, available 24/7, 1-800-799-7233, or text START to 88788.
Why are you here?
I'm looking for a great warrior.
So what kind of warrior have you been?
The way of the warrior.
He needed a warrior's mind.
Clearly, this was all planned by warriors of...
Warriors, now is the time.
Hi, this is Jennifer Tidwell, and you're listening to the Warrior of Impact podcast. I am a warrior of mental, physical, and spiritual traumatic abuse, here to help you recover and heal the right way.
All right, and you are listening to the Warrior of Impact podcast. This is Michael, as always, with Shannon, and we are continuing our conversation through the world of mental health. It is May. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. And today's guest is somebody that's taking it from a different perspective. We have all dealt with traumas in our life. Last week, we talked about the 7 stresses of our lives that we all go through. And these are points in our lives where trauma is going to be inevitable. And how we process and how we deal with that trauma is just as important as what's on the other side of that healing. So it is my pleasure to introduce our trauma coach specialist, our good friend, Jennifer. If you would, please just give us a little bit of introduction. Let us know about you. Give us your 10,000-foot scope and talk to us a little bit about who you are and what brought you to the world of trauma coaching and, kind of your story.
So I am Jennifer Tidwell, owner and founder of Jennifer Tidwell's Healing Ministries, where I help women who have been through traumatic abuse heal mentally, physically, and spiritually, because all three are connected. If you try to tackle one, you got to tackle the other two, or else you're not going to be completely healed. I came into this about 2 years ago 3 years ago, I began my own healing journey from my own trauma. And I started coaching 2 years ago as a result. My trauma goes all the way back to when I was 2 years old. I was sexually molested by my paternal grandparents, me and my brother. He was 14 months younger than me. And that led us into a spiral of traumatic behaviors that were programmed into our minds. And it led us to believe lies about ourselves, about our world, about people. And I didn't fully wake up to it until about 3 years ago. And I'm currently 41 years old. I have 2 sons. One is 23 in the Marine Corps. Well, actually, he's discharged now, just recently. I'm trying to get used to saying that. and then my youngest son is 8. His name is also Michael. So love the name. Very powerful, strong name. And so my trauma lasted 38 years. I had 38 years of mental programming that was on autopilot, that was mastering me. And I had no idea. When I woke up to it, it was as a result of another traumatic relationship that I was in for 15 years. And I really sought God on it. And I'm a spiritual person. He led me to avenues of coaches and therapists and counselors and techniques, taught me a bunch of stuff that now I bring to the table to help other women heal from theirs. And it's my mission and passion to just help break women free from it, break us free from the lies that we've believed and the behaviors that are attached to it. And so many people don't even realize that they're trapped in their own trauma. So that's a little bit about me and my background.
Yeah.
Got any questions yet?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, obviously, I am a big believer of like, respecting boundaries and balancing that with the importance of sharing our story. Because I think it's important. As, a victim of sexual abuse, kind of walk us through like your childhood, like, upbringing and the experiences that, kind of were around that. And like, I think that the key here is recognizing, it's just so crazy because we were just talking about this with our other guest for last week, is going from a state of victimhood and recognizing that you're a victim to starting the healing process. And I don't think that that's something that's possible as a child, not in a true sense, because we are being told the story. It's not even a matter of the lies that we tell ourselves, it's the lies that are being told to us. And so it is, we don't even have that neuroplastic understanding of how our chemical makeup is done yet. We're not, cognitively developed. So it really is somebody else creating that foundation for you. So just kind of walk us through. And I know that this is, like, again, this could get very emotional. This could get very, graphic and hard. But I think it's important for people to share. So share what you're comfortable with sharing, because I think it's your story, and you have every right to own that.
Sure. And I don't mind sharing it. I firmly believe that the enemy doesn't want us to talk about our trauma, because if we talk about our trauma and how we got through it, then we're helping other people get free. And that's not his agenda. He wants to keep people trapped. So when I was 2, my mother and father divorced, and I had visitations every other weekend with my grandparents over there. And me and my brother. My brother is now passed away. He took his life as a result of his trauma. He drowned it out with alcohol, and he took his life December 3rd, 2020. So as we were growing up as kids, it started for me when I was 2, and it lasted until about 6 years old. That's when everything came to light. Now, from 2 to age 6, I don't have much conscious memory. However, the subconscious and the body and the muscles do have the memory. And my brother, I think his started when he was probably, he had to have been 2 when for him as well. So they waited till he was a little bit older. And I believe he actually did have some conscious memory. And he would never talk about it, but he suffered from night tremors, PTSD, depression, a bunch of other things as a result. And although I do remember, like, when it came to light, that I reached out to my mom's friend and told her what was happening. And then my aunt found out, and then my mom, and then it went to the law, and we went into counseling. And I remember drawing a picture of a bear attacking my chest with a knife and a fork. And this was in West Virginia. My grandparents were religious leaders. I'm going to put it to you that way. And they would, now the stories, like you said, the stories that have been told to us, these are stories that were told to me later in life as I was putting the puzzle together. And I even met up in 2010, I reconnected with my dad and found out I had other siblings. So I reconnected with my older sibling, and she told me some horrific stories as well. So as I'm piecing all this together and getting to know my siblings, I still don't have anything to do with my father. I learned that after they would abuse us, they would give us drugs to knock us out. Their prescription drugs, whatever it was. I assumed Valium, because they were older generation and had health issues and whatever else was going on. But they would put us outside when they were done. Me and my brother, they would put us outside naked. And they had an outhouse. There was no bathroom inside the house because this was in the 80s, in the hills of West Virginia, in the holler. And then they did this, I guess, any time of the year. So it didn't matter if it was, summer, winter, fall. We were outside naked, keeping each other warm. And there was a couple times in my adult life that I wanted to go seek the court records, because this did go to court in West Virginia, and it was all over the news. It was a big case because my grandparents were well known. And there was a jury, and it was a hung jury by one. So they were set free. And I believe, after talking to my older sister, that one juror knew my grandparents, had connections, and was probably paid off. So this is stuff you hear about and you see in the movies, but it actually happens in real life. And it could be happening to somebody right now who's listening to this. We all have some form of trauma that shapes us. And there's always something that goes right back to childhood. It's the core program that projects you into this life. What you believe, what you think, how you feel. And after reconnecting with my dad and my siblings, I came to forgive them, for they did not know what they were doing. And I've released them, and they are passed away now. I've gained peace with it. And through my other experiences, when you experience one trauma, you're going to follow with other traumas. The other traumas that followed were domestic violence, alcoholism, prescription drug abuse, teen pregnancy. I mentioned I had a 23-year-old. I was 17 when I got pregnant with him, and his dad left when I was 6 months pregnant. And it all led up to my first marriage was abusive. It lasted 6 months. I told him if he ever laid his hands on me, I'd be gone. And he did. He didn't believe me, and I left. And he even threatened to kill me. So I left that one. And then I totally uprooted and left where I'm at now. I needed to be replanted somewhere else in order to have a different life, have a different experience, draw closer to God. And I did that. However, I got tied up into another marriage that was toxic. And I didn't know it until 3 years ago. I woke up from it. That's A to Z pretty much in a summary.
What I've learned is when you experience a trauma, you'll continue to find ways to put yourself in other traumatic situations until you start to heal from that original trauma. And last week with Julie, we talked about domestic violence, and we talked about how when you get in that situation, sometimes you know, sometimes you don't, and how hard it is to get out of that.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's very hard, because when you are a victim of traumatic abuse of any kind, fear rules you. And that is what is keeping you stuck. For me, fear kept me in both marriages. Fear of losing something. But what was I really losing? I was losing myself. And like I said, my first marriage, he threw me on the bed, pinned me down, threatened to kill me if I didn't shut up. And it took 2 days for me to leave. I had to wait for that safe moment. And it took courage. It took bravery. No matter how scared I was, it took me sacrificing my house, all my personal belongings, and the money, which we were poor back then anyway. And I didn't care. When I left, on that second day, he was sound asleep in the morning. I grabbed Zachary, and only Zachary's things, his bottles, food, clothes, a few diapers. whatever I could fit in one bag quick enough to get out, because I knew that I had family that would help me. And at that time, I was ostracized from my family because of him. But I knew no matter what, that they would take me back.
We talked about that also, about how a lot of times when you're in an abusive relationship, you become isolated. And so you forget that you have people in your life who will help you because you're so isolated from them.
Well, and it's more than just forgetting. You do know you have people. It's at that point, the story that you've been told has made you believe that they're not going to help you. Because that's the way it was. And that was the actions from my family. I mean, the constant, if you continue to stay with him, then we're not going to help you out, which was not true. But that added to the story that my ex-husband was telling me. Yeah, they're not going to help you out. They already said they're not going to help you out. So you tend to believe that. The brain believes everything it thinks, positive and negative. And the more the brain hears it, the more it is wired to become a permanent implantation into the subconscious. Talking about neuroplasticity. The brain is always renewing itself. And so many people do not know that. We have the power. We have the power to change our minds and our brains to become better than what it was just by a single thought.
Yeah. I think
we talk about that too, about reframing your mindset and reteaching yourself, to have a different mindset, which will help you change your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so many people will tell you too that, it's, you can't say the I am statements, or I don't believe this if I say this. And at first, no. But the more you do it, the more you're going to believe it.
Yeah. And I think that we get, when we don't have a choice in the matter, as like when we're kids, when we are stuck in this mindset of sacrifice over like sanctity of self, because I think that's something that we don't talk about too, is like there's a lot of superficial things that we put over ourselves in process of value, because when you are in abusive relationships, when you are in these demeaning situations where your value is put below so many other things like the value of your home and your belongings, and losing those things become more important than your own well-being. And nobody talks about that, right? Like we don't talk about like, I stayed because I didn't want to lose my home. I stayed because, the thought of having to uproot, like I would rather it be done to me than my kids or this or that. So I'll just deal with it. And I don't think we bring light to that enough, because in hindsight now we know those to be superficial reasons, but in the moment, like you're just trying to survive. You're just trying to breathe, and whatever your justification, you have every freaking right to have that as your justification in the moment. And anybody that doesn't get that, like, I just wish for them to have that understanding and compassion, because nobody chooses to be a victim of abuse of any sort. Nobody chooses to be, the rug that other people walk over, right? It doesn't, it's not like you wake up and you're like, hey, today I'm going to decide to start this relationship for the next, 20 years of my life, and, whatever, I'm good. Nobody does that. And I think that is the idiotic thing that I hear when people try to like victim blame, or they try to like downplay the fact that like, look, something shitty happened to somebody. Can we just acknowledge the fact that like for a moment, let's have some compassion to the fact that this is a person who's dealt with a tragedy, the likes of which is a nightmare for most people to even consider. Let's start there.
Like we talked about last week, it doesn't happen the first day. When you're in an emotional, or when you're in an abusive relationship, it's not the very first time. Nobody would stay the very first time. You have to build into that abusive relationship. And it starts so subtly. Like I said last week, it just, before you know it, you're in this situation. And if you have been in a situation where you had no power as a child, and you've been you've witnessed or you've been in abusive households, it's normal for you. You don't know any different. You think that that's the normal way that life is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And so it can be even harder to tell yourself that this is a situation you need to get out of. And we don't talk enough about women or men, because men can also be in abusive relationships. We shouldn't forget that. When you have children, it's easier for you to say, I'm going to give up my place to live. I'm going to give up all my things and walk out. It's really hard to do that when you have children, because things that you will put yourself through, you will not put your children through. I can sleep in a car. My children cannot, and so it becomes really difficult, especially when you're in a position where you either make less money or you make no money, to get out of that. Because when you have no money, how do you take care of your kids? And so you feel forced to stay in those situations.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys are so right on. Growing up in it as a kid, the kids do not have a choice. And the brain for women matures at the age of 21. The brain for men matures at the age of 25.
I think you're giving us too much credit.
And I mean, we don't really wake up from those programs from others until mid-20s or later. So up until, I'm just going to cap it at 25, we're all robots, pretty much, trained by somebody else's beliefs, by somebody else's thoughts, somebody else's behavior patterns, somebody else's experiences, because it's the experiences that shape the beliefs. Absolutely. And form the thoughts that are attached to it. 3 years ago, when I woke up to it, very first book that I read was called Psycho-Cybernetics. It was written by a plastic surgeon. And he said he would have clients come in all the time wanting to fix something on their face. Some were legit, some were not. And the reason those that were not was because they had inner work that needed to be done with their self-image. He would fix it anyway. They would come back. They're still not pleased. And this is when, after doing this for so long, he finally went into learn the psychology behind it. And he talked about the self-image and the self-worth and the self-value of these clients. And then he started telling them, you're not going to be happy with what I do to you because you've got a deeper inner issue with how you feel about yourself that came from somewhere. And until we as adults acknowledge that what happened to us, no, it was not right. However, it taught us something about ourselves that we need to face so that we can grow in a new direction. We have the power of ourselves, our minds, our bodies, and our spirits to make those changes. The cliche is, you want to change your life, change your thoughts. And that's true. But so many people don't believe it because of it's like you said, this is a norm for people. Yeah. The behaviors we all grow up with is a normality.
Right. We only know what's our life. Our reality is based upon our experiences. So if this is the situation that you're in, and I think that's probably one of like the sad, there's sadness. And that's not, I'm not saying that this is not a place of pity. This is not a place of downplaying. It's like, but there's a sadness that we have to recognize about that, right? That you, like many other childhood victims, and I have a soft spot for any child that goes through anything other than the security of the life that they should be granted. That's why I sit on Safe Child NC, Parent Advisory Council. there's certain things that we need to make sure, and protecting our children, and if they're not being protected by their parents, then there are people that need to make sure that we are doing that, because that's their reality and that's all they know, and it does set up
Right.
that foundation. I think that that's hard for people to wrap their head around, but that's their reality. That's all they know. That is their normal.
Yeah.
They're being bred, and we talk, that is a prime, part of the victim state. It's like when an adult is doing something to a kid, they're grooming them. It's that breeding mentality of cultivating that life for them, and they don't care about the outcome. They don't care about what it's like 38 years later. For them,
Right.
it's their initial satisfaction for whatever, whatever the perversion is that leads them that way, So I'm curious, when you're going through this as a child, and to the memory, I know that there's probably a lot of dissociation and things that were probably blocked out, from your consciousness, but obviously this happened in the 80s. Now, in the late 2020s, we are equipped at a elementary school level, at a pediatrician level, for them to really be keened in on looking for these markers and these telltale signs of abuse. In the 80s, like, that was you go sit in the back seat of a station wagon. You don't need a seatbelt. You went to the backyard to grab the switch for you to get your tail whooped. That was kind of like the thing. And so, like,
Yep.
I think as we've kind of grown up and our culture has really gotten more aware of these things that are happening behind closed doors, do you remember there ever being a time where there was people from the outside, and maybe the narrative switched, or the stories that you were told to tell, or anything like that?
I don't actually. Like you said, because of the drugs and being asleep. So when you're asleep and something's happening to you while you're asleep, like going in for surgery, you have no conscious memory. It's not there consciously, but it's there subconsciously.
Right.
So when you start acting out in certain ways, you start to question, why am I acting out like this? What is tied to this? Like you said, keyword earlier, foundation. What is the foundation and the root of this behavior that I keep doing? About the only thing that I can remember consciously is going into the kitchen of their house one day to steal a cookie. I wanted a cookie. And I was caught. I don't remember who caught me, but I remember feeling extreme dread and fear. And I don't remember anything after that. So that's about the only conscious memory that I have. But other than, well, there's one other. My grandpa had a truck, and he would drive us to a store kind of far away, actually. It seemed far away. I was a kid. Now it's probably 10 minutes down the road. And I remember we would go to this store for candy, and he insisted that I sit on his lap. But I don't remember anything happening. I just remember one time sitting on his lap. And I don't think anything happened, but in his mind, something probably was forming in his thoughts. So, I mean, we're driving, anybody could see, but like you said, these were the normal stuff that happened back in the 80s or even further, stuff that you don't talk about it. Like you said, there's so much that the society has normalized and says, okay, and we don't talk about it enough. And people now, we've all gone through a collective trauma right now. Look at where the world is right now. This has been for the last 2 years. And because people are angry, they're not being heard, they're not being justified, some are not getting their way, like a little toddler. we're all acting out of our feelings of anger, bitterness, resentment, unforgiveness. And it's time to come back to the opposite of those. We need to start loving people more. And one way of loving people more is listening.
Unfortunately, because of this pandemic, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I believe in the, social distancing, quarantining, but unfortunately, that has isolated a lot of people. And these things that we're talking about, abuse, whether it's emotional, physical, sexual, they've kind of gone under the rug. I heard the other day that suicide rates are through the roof because we've been isolated. People haven't been able to get the mental health services that they need. I know my therapist still is not open. It's still virtual, still not going in and sitting down in person. So it's been difficult. And like Mike said, now teachers, doctors, all these people have been taught to look for these signs, but for the last, 2 to 3 years, we haven't been seeing those people regularly. So these traumas have been allowed now to stretch out because of the isolation from being quarantined.
Right. Well, and that's one of the big purposes behind this thing, given the whole 6-foot rule. The enemy wants us divided. He doesn't want us to get close to each other. We need each other. We're here to help one another, to love one another, to be friends, to build each other up. And we can't do that if we're far apart. So yeah, and even in the midst of the pandemic, more and more domestic violent households have increased. There's been more murders as a result, because those moms or dads or women or men, they weren't able to leave.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see some who were right there on the edge, getting ready to walk out the door like I did. And then all of a sudden said, nope. And it pulled them back in, and they're probably still stuck in it, or they're not here anymore.
Right. And that's because a lot of those services were discontinued. A lot of, domestic violence shelters, et cetera, just weren't accessible.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, I mean, this is like a secondary thing that I don't think people even think of. So we actually, I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, we started working with a family law firm as a marketing client, and we really started seeing how much their hands were tied. The court closed. So now these separations and these divorces that were supposed to be going through were put on pause. I was going through stuff with custody that went on for 3 years longer because of the pandemic than it needed to. So now the separation that was supposed to happen is been put on pause. Then we have this housing surge, this housing market corruption that now makes it impossible for you to leave and go find your own place. And then there's all these just things that are going on left and right that we don't think about that have affected everything that's going on. And our day-to-day livelihood is just, I think what we really need more than anything is, instead of a culture and cultivating division, is we really need to start cultivating healing. And I think the only way we do that is by starting to listen to each other, like you were saying. It's like we've all got our stories, we've all got our walks of life. Rather than using that as a point of division or a point of conflict, let's try to learn from each other and recognize that no one of us have all the answers, and it's always going to be an opinion until it's a fact. And most of us are not seeking fact. We're seeking some emotional sort of like permission. Comfort. Or we want emotional validation. I want validation for feeling the way I feel, and that's it. And so I think that a lot of that really stems from just this place of we're so like, it's just a lot of misdirection of emotions and where to put it.
Right.
So hard.
And
the
emotions are hard to deal with too for everybody, especially when you have a plethora of them at one time. as a result of being in an active, present, abusive situation. Like myself, when I was leaving my first husband, I had all kinds of emotions exploding in my brain. But I made that step anyway. Yeah. I made a different choice. And I chose a different thought. Now, back then, in the midst of it, I was just reacting. Yeah. Right?
The primal fight or flight.
Not, exactly. And we all have that. And that's another thing, the primal fight or flight with the amygdala. We've had so much happen in our world that even our amygdala believes that some of the things that we want to fight from or flee from aren't even worth fighting and fleeing from. Like, I'm afraid to step outside of my house and sit on the step because there's spiders all around. I mean, I'm not dissing, any kind of phobias, but we can kill a spider. But that's something is that a life-threatening? This is my whole point here. Is it a life-threatening fear where you're fight or flight? The life-threatening fear, fight or flight should be, I have a bear running after me to attack me. I'm not going to stand there and let it. I'm going to run. That is a legitimate fear. Okay. Other fears, especially for women or men in abusive situations. Trying to think of one that I had.
I know a big one is money.
Well, yeah, money is a big one. It really is. Because that was for me. Even in both situations. Well, my first marriage, I was the breadwinner until I lost my job, and then my car was repossessed, and we actually were homeless for 1 week, and then we stayed with his grandparents, and got ourselves picked back up. We got a trailer, and it was in the trailer when that incident happened, and then I left, and so finances, afraid of how am I going to survive financially? There are resources out there. Some take time. Yes. Some take, you got to prove this and that, but they're there. And if you don't act now, then it's not going to happen when you need it. Like some places have waiting lists. If you need a house in like the Section 8, if you need a house, go get on that waiting list now. Don't wait 1 week, 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months. If that's what you really need to do it now. Act now for your own protection, your children's protection. Another fear would be here's one that's not really legit, okay? But like afraid to clean the house the wrong way. What kind of repercussion would that bring? It would bring a very loud argument, an abusive argument, where the kids are witnessing it. And it would break me down of feeling not worthy enough. And I was afraid to do the dishes the wrong way. But the truth of the matter was, I was never going to do it right his way anyway.
Right.
And I always try to point that out. The dishes are getting done, aren't they? Yeah. Or if I'm cooking, coming to supervise and inspect cooking, I finally started standing up. I got some, I'm a warrior, y'all, and I will fight back. And I would look at him several times. Like, you want to cook this? You got to stand up for yourself. You got to get that backbone, that grit, that sick and tired of being sick and tired attitude. You got to know your worth. And that's hard for a lot of people. And that's where it started for me. When I picked up that book, Psycho-Cybernetics, I started learning my self-image. My second book was about neuroplasticity and how I could change my mind, And those two books propelled me into my further studies to where I am today.
And I think it's really hard to get to a place of knowing your value when you have somebody at times screaming in your face how little value you actually have. And I think that's like one of the hardest parts about all of this, right? It's like we understand, from the world of coaching, from the world of personal development and transformation, that it's the process that needs to get done. But it's all easier said than done when you are living in a situation that is providing you with nothing but the exact opposite, and really digging the hole deeper and deeper. And it's not only the lies that you're telling yourself, it's the narrative that somebody else is taking it upon themselves to write for you.
Exactly.
So
and then, like I said in the very beginning, what we hear the most, our brain believes.
Yeah. So I'm curious, so a big part of what you do, obviously you approach this from a ministry standpoint. And so spirituality is something that's really important to you. Did you have any struggles with spirituality because of your grandparents being in the church and, representing their actions from a place of spirituality? Like, did you have any struggles with that along the way to now using and finding spirituality as your foundation?
Yes, I will say from the very beginning, I think I was born questioning what is true. And I was born observing human behavior. So the mind and the behaviors always fascinated me. Now, my paternal grandparents were a certain religion, and I'm not going to name religions.
Yeah, don't need.
But that was viewed upon as very bad. So we never attended there. I grew up in a different religion that I no longer follow. I didn't like it. I didn't feel like I was taught enough about the Bible and taught enough about a relationship with Jesus. It was more traditions, rules. And knowing what I know about the Bible now, Jesus did not come for religion. He came for a relationship. But after that, let's see, and I was probably in my teen years when we just stopped doing church altogether. But when I was adult, that probably about 19, I started going to a different church, different religion. And I was baptized under this religion by my own choice. And even that was initially viewed as by my family as the wrong thing to do with this specific religion, because there was a false belief that this religion was tied to the religion of my grandparents, which it wasn't. So I had to help my family understand and be comfortable. And I stopped going. I went there for years, and then I moved and started going to another different type of religion. Like I said, I always searched for the truth. So, and I'm a very open person. I view both sides of the stories. It takes two, not one, for anything to happen. So that I've always been about justice, peace, loving others. And I found a church that was all of this and really taught the relationship aspect and put it down to the human level in realism. It was genuine. It was authentic. And I stayed there for many years until I moved. I moved away from Raleigh September 2020. And so after that, I started doing online church because of COVID. And this one that I attend now, it's a big mega church. It's global. And I love it because, God really speaks to me through it. But I made my own path. I made my own choice, regardless of what others thought. I don't follow the people. I don't really care about their opinions because I lead my life the way God wants me to lead it. And that's what really matters to me. So I feel like I've done what God wants me to do. And if other people don't like it, well, that's kind of expected. But I'm sorry, I don't live my life to please you anymore. I'm doing what's right according to what God tells me to do. And I'm going out here with the ministry and helping others find their way of peace and love and truth and happiness and justice.
Really hard journey when you experience something traumatic, especially as a child. When you go through something, it can be a really hard journey to get back to spirituality because you're so angry with the universe for allowing these things to happen to you. When you think about whichever religion you believe in, when you start thinking about it, you expect that your belief system is going to keep you safe, right? And it didn't. It let you down. And so there's a lot of anger, as in, how could you allow this to happen to me? How could you allow me to get into this situation? And so there's an element of learning to forgive on a spiritual level, also the universe, a higher power, for allowing you to go through those things. And you have to find that element of faith to say, you have to find that element of faith to be able to say, yes, this happened to me, but I'm still going to have this faith. I'm still going to allow myself to be a spiritual being.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's where I'm at now. I've had experiences and ventured different types of religions, different types of spirituality practices, and I've observed, and I'm still learning. There's a whole lot more out there. And I'm open to learning why people believe what they believe. And if their life is worth living, then maybe I should pay attention.
Yeah. I love studying all forms of religion and spirituality because I think you do learn a lot about individuals' cultures. You learn a lot about just like the triumph of man. Like, you think about it, like, empires have been built and destroyed over our belief systems. Love and religion. That's about it. Love and religion are the cause of like a lot of our greatest atrocities, but also our greatest triumphs. And I think it's important to recognize that. Like, I think it's really easy to say, like, all wars are fought over this or that. Like, well, no, like there's a lot of good that comes from it too. And, I look at things from, there's scriptural, religion, there's historical, accuracy, and then there's just this innate connection that we have with our soul, the universe, and energy. And hopefully through the course of people's lives, they find a way to interweave all of those into some form of belief. Because I think, and we talk about it a lot, it's fundamental to becoming a true warrior. You have to tap into your spirituality. And really, that is a relationship on a soulful level, understanding that there is a greater power. I'm not the person to tell you who to believe in. That is a very personal journey, but I will advocate that we should constantly explore what that means to us, because that is a part of our lives that will always be interwoven into everything that we do. And if you want to, praise some deity or, have some totem that does it for you, I don't have to agree with you to not be able to at least recognize that that's your path. And if that gives you the fulfillment and it answers the questions for you, that's all right. That's good with me. Like, I don't need to there was a point in my life where I felt the need to take the evangelical approach to, to convert and to almost condemn. And I realized if condemnation is a part of my belief system, then that's probably not a belief that I want to be a part of. And so
Right.
my belief system is very much in conjunction with, recognizing that I have a creator, recognizing that I have an individualized relationship, and then I walk my path in a way that I feel like I'm doing that, belief justice.
I could have easily spent my whole life studying theology. I think that it is one of the most interesting topics. But what I have learned through, and I'm sure Mike and Jennifer will agree, is that at the base level of every religion, we want the same thing, right? To serve and to love one another. And I think that, like Mike, I might not agree with you. I'm not a Christian. I might not agree with where your belief system comes from, but I understand that we need to respect each other. We don't have to agree with each other, but at the very bottom of every belief system is we want to love one another and we want to show grace to one another. And I think that that is the important thing. And kind of like Mike said, for me, any religion that forces you to hate someone or consider someone evil, or like you said, condemn someone, that's not a system that I want to be a part of.
Right. Nope. Because even with theology, and you go back and research the text and the scriptures, Jesus didn't come to condemn.
No.
So why should we?
Exactly.
Like, that's not a good thing. Love is the ultimate goal. And if you look at all the religions and belief systems, they also all have a belief that there is a higher being.
Yep. Absolutely.
We just call it different things.
Exactly.
And
so I think
it's like a word in the dictionary that changes its definition every decade.
For me, what I always think to myself is we're all on a different path going to the same place. So why are we arguing about it?
Exactly. Because we all have a different journey, different purpose.
Right.
But the same goal is to be with each other, to help each other. We all have different gifts and talents. And if we're not in tune with ourselves and our own spirituality, we're not going to know what we're here for.
It all goes back to, I'll take it back to business for a second, that I used to be afraid of offering people my help because I would think that they would think I was being salesy or trying to push stuff on them. But what I discovered in business is true in life. And that is someone out there needs what you have. Doesn't it have to be business related? It could be someone out there needs to hear your story. Someone out there needs to know what you've been through, because that is going to be of value to them.
Yeah. And I'll take that a step further. I recently heard this perspective and it changed the way I think about it. You not sharing that is actually the most selfish thing that you can do. And I'm not saying that Michael to Shannon or Michael to anyone. It's if you have a skill set, if you have a story, if you're afraid of like, well, I'm putting myself out there, it's a selfish act to not share it because you are being equipped with a gift. And that is no different from religious structure to putting a light under a lamp. You are hiding it from the world and you need to just glow. And if you're hiding that, that is no different than allowing people to go through persecution or going through the hardships they're going through when you have the gift that can give them the solution. The reason why I bring up spirituality the way that I brought it up is I think to ignore that there is a fundamental part of spirituality that helps with things like mental health. Now, I don't think we can whitewash mental health away and pray it away or anything like that.
No.
I don't think it's that simple. And to do that, I think would be a little bit naive. But I think we've all been in some environment of a church structure or know somebody, to where that's the approach, right? We're bringing things taboo to light now in 2020s, in 2022 that, I think it's okay to be like, yeah, there was a time in life where I went to a church where we're like, you pray it away. Oh, they've got the depression. They've got that depression. They've caught the depression. We've got to pray it away. And you know exactly what I say when I say that. That's not what I mean by spirituality plays a role in our mental health growth. When we have a relationship with a being beyond ourselves, or really the relationship with ourselves on a level of understanding our soul, like we are not the voice in our head kind of level, then we recognize that we are really connected in a way beyond just our rational thought and what we understand. We can only perceive what we can comprehend. When we believe and understand, and that's where faith comes in. We have this faith that there is something beyond our understanding, our logic. That's like saying, I could rationally understand the depth of our universe, an ever expanding, ever growing, ever continuing universe. And that's like me saying, oh yeah, I know what the end looks like because it looks like the beginning, and knowing that it being a cycle. It'd be impossible. And for me to try to rationalize that, what we need is to understand that there is what I call that destination unknown. It's that part of going somewhere on that path, don't know where I'm going, but I know where I'm going is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then when we have that invites things like boundaries and grace and self-love and shifting our mindset, which are all things that are required to not only heal from a place of our heart being healed and forgiving and developing the life that we want, and really attacking things like mental health. There's no way in hell that I could have been able to even approach dealing with my PTSD if I was not fully prepared to recognize that there are things beyond me. Because I think that that's the thing, right? When we are dealing with mental health, we are saying, I'm the only person with this problem. I'm the person dealing with this. And it's not, I'm not saying that to a place of condemning or victim blaming by any means, but that's the mindset we get in, right? We're the only person that is dealing with this struggle. So how could anybody help us? We are the only person who is dealing with this level of pain, because our thought to be able to believe anything other than that, sometimes we just frankly don't have the energy to believe. And that's okay.
Exactly.
And that is okay. It is okay to be not okay. And if anything else that people get from this, it's give yourself some grace and recognize that it is all right to be a mess. Fall apart.
That's right. Sit
in your mess. And then the goal is just don't unpack and live there. But there's times in your life where you're like, yeah, no, stuff's not right. But by being able to recognize that there is more, there's life on the other side, there's opportunity, there's growth. I think that the importance, and I've been talking about this a lot throughout all of May, is we need to normalize asking for help, because that is where it starts. We need to build our support team. We need to find people that, because we can only do so much of ourselves. And this is a very solo path journey. Mental health, and that's the side. It is your mental health, but mental health care is health care. It is no different than any other doctor. It is no different than any other need that you have. And by providing ourselves with that support is vital.
I think that at the base of a lot of issues that we go through, alcoholism, drug addiction, any type of addiction, is a mental health component. And so I feel like when we start talking about how to end addiction, how to end these addictions that people have, we don't look at mental health enough. And I'll tell you that my therapist has told me, and you guys probably understand as well, when you have anxiety, when you have stress, when you have depression, these things change your physical characteristics. When you are depressed, you are exhausted. Your body is exhausted. Your mental state is affecting your physical being. And so we don't talk enough about how mental health is the root cause of so many things. Stress, anxiety, both of those have a very well documented effect on your physical health.
Yeah. So that brings me to the book that I've, it'll definitely change your physique. The mind-body connection. There's several books out there. One is by Deb Shapiro. Your body speaks your mind. So if you've got an ailment, you can look in the index and go to the page that it tells you to go to, and it'll tell you what's going on with your mind, your state of mind. It's connected. It's all connected. And even the spirituality is connected. The soul. We are spirit beings in a human form here.
I say that all the time.
Here with a purpose to help others. We're not here for ourselves. And going back to the whole holding your light under the table or whatever, withholding that from people that are around you. We're all called to a certain people group. And if we don't share that, then that is also keeping that group of people in their bondage. Yep. It's delaying their blessing and their healing. And the spirit in the body, I've got a big knack for always being in the right place at the right time. And I'm a firm believer in divine appointments with divine connections. And I can tell I'm very in tune with myself now, where I used to not be, because I've put myself under the mental training. Everything starts in the mind, and it is connected to our body and spirit. But as a warrior, as a spiritual warrior in a human form. Now, humanly speaking, flesh speaking, somebody could really kick my ass and do some damage. Spiritually and mentally, I am strong. And other people, when they come into my presence, they know that. It's because I've gone through the trainings. I have reframed, retrained, reprogrammed my automatic responses. I have learned my triggers. I've learned my deep-rooted core belief systems, which is everything. It's your core belief that drives your thoughts and actions and feelings. So if you're acting a certain way, you feel a certain way, and you wonder why, go find out what that core belief is behind it. And this is what I tackle. I get to the root and the foundation of people in their minds, because that's where it all begins. A warrior is, like you said too, Michael, seeks help.
Yep, absolutely.
If you think of a battlefield of soldiers in a war, we got one going on right now, right? Some soldiers, warriors, will quit and they'll just die right there. Others will rise, no matter how they feel, no matter how damaged they're hurt. They'll keep going, but they don't do it alone. And they will encourage and empower other soldiers to get back up, because they recognize that they're not in this alone. So they are never afraid to ask for help. Warriors also know their worth and value, and they train themselves up in this. They know their strengths and weaknesses mentally, physically, and spiritually. They're always in tune with themselves. They also know when to rest.
Yeah,
they know how to take care of themselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. And because of all of those combined, they know how to get through each battle that comes their way, even in the unknown periods. And it's the unknown that really tests us. It tests our strength mentally. It tests our patience, our perseverance, our endurance, everything about our inner character. But in that state of unknown, because the brain and the body has never gone through that experience, fear arises. But you got to fight against that too. And you got to choose to say, like in the middle of the battlefield, you've got a warrior soldier who's gone into new territory, never been there, never seen it, doesn't know what to expect. He's afraid as hell, but he's not quitting because he knows the rewards on the other side. He's focused on the end goal. He's focused on the prize. And he's taking the journey one step at a time. And with each step, he's celebrating those steps because it's those small steps that lead to that victory.
Yeah.
The warrior is the warrior mindset is you've got to train yourself up in these ways and keep going.
I think one of the key things that you're talking about there too, it's not about having an absence of fear. Like it's recognizing that you have the strength. The thing that I hear and the thing that I recognize, it's fear is not absent, but what is absent is shame.
Mm-hmm.
I have no shame behind the decision. I have no shame behind the fact that I know that I am afraid because I am strong.
Right.
Yeah, and you're not ashamed and scared.
Yeah, because I fundamentally believe that how we see ourselves is how we treat ourselves, and how we treat ourselves is how we serve others. We serve, like, that's where we serve ourselves. Like, we serve others from the same place of how we treat ourselves. So if we're not treating ourselves properly, we're not serving others in a way that they deserve. That's why self-love is so important. It's vital, and it's not some Instagram catchphrase. It is vital to the work that we do, because if we want to serve others truly, with intention, with purpose, then we have no business breaking ourselves down to a place as minuscule as the places that we force ourselves to live.
Right.
That's why I fundamentally know this is my purpose. I have a warrior spirit that I live outward, and my goal is to invite others to do the same and show them that path. Because when we do, it is the ultimate way of living in purpose. It is the ultimate way to serve others, because the strength shows. I don't need armor, because I know the strength is in there to go to battle when I need to. But it's the peace of knowing that the strength is there, that I can navigate the times that a battle's not even on the horizon.
Yep. And so I think from this point, how do we get people from the victim mentality, the victimhood, from their trauma to the warrior mentality?
Yeah.
And it starts with self-love.
Absolutely. So I talked about this last week, and I have a 3-step system of going, because I think that this is a system that everybody needs to do before they even start the transition. The first is recognizing that you are a victim.
Yep.
It's you go to AA, what's the first thing they say? You know, you have to admit that you have a problem, and recognizing that there is a need for growth. You have to recognize, so first, you have to recognize that you were indeed a victim. Caveat to that is recognizing that you were a victim without taking residence in victimhood.
Exactly.
You know, like you don't need to be a victim. You don't need to be a martyr. Just recognize it. Acknowledge it without trying to fix it. The next step is the process of education. Recognizing, finding the resources and the tools so that you can come to terms with and do the things like forgive and start the path of self-discovery. And then through that, the third and final process of enlightenment in this sense is starting to recognize the strengths that you already hold in yourself that are present. So recognizing that the strengths that you're seeking are already present in you. And then in that process of transformation, you start honing those skills through developing the mindset, recognizing the strengths and your gifts, understanding and strengthening your belief system of your spirituality and letting your soul ignite, and then sharing that with the world, invigorating your life with the adventure that it is, and then becoming visible and being vulnerable and allowing through that visible vulnerability to share your story, be seen, and that is ultimately how we deliver impact.
And I want to add one thing to this whole process of renewal. There's also a requirement of shedding the old.
Yep.
When you shed the old part of you, your old thoughts, your old beliefs, even your old environment, you will go through a sadness and a grief process.
Yep.
And so it's critical that when you grow into the warrior mindset, to have help by your side, trusted help by your side.
Yep.
those who have been there, done that, experienced it, are truly compassionate and understanding with you.
Yeah.
And not just there for you to dump on their shoulder and then they go away and not really care about you. And it doesn't require 10 people. You can have 3 trusted sources to help you on this journey. And actually, I would probably say that, in my opinion, that would be the minimum requirement, 3, to help you on your journey to recovery, healing, and into that warrior mindset, because it's not going to be easy.
Yeah. And I often say the cost for the life you want is the life you had.
Yep. You got to be willing to give up that life and everything attached to it.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect transition to our hot seat.
Mhm.
So we will go into our 3 questions that we ask all of our guests. Really, this is an opportunity for us to lean on our other voices that we bring on the show to define what it means to be a warrior. And so the first is, how do you define what it means to be a warrior?
And I wrote these answers down. I don't know where they're at right now. How do I define what it means to be a warrior? I feel like I already did answer that. But the key thing for me would be just to keep going and not give up, no matter how afraid you are, no matter how much it might hurt. I mean, if you think of the birthing process, that's a battle and it's painful. And you can't stop going in labor. I mean, that baby's got to come out. So you keep pushing no matter what. And you don't listen to the outsiders, especially those that are trying to bring you down or keep you back into your old life. But defining a warrior is not giving up and keep going.
And we just spent over an hour of prime examples, but for yourself, maybe how would you say that you have demonstrated that in your life? What is like a moment of pride for you? Like boast on yourself a little bit, how you have demonstrated not giving up that you recognize.
So I would have to say, with regards to both of my marriages and leaving those relationships, the first one was physical with a threat of death. And I did it anyway. The second one, I was actually afraid in the moment because I had limited time to get out. And I wanted to make sure I had everything that, packed up. And I didn't know where I was going. I mean, I did, but I didn't. It was a whole new journey from 15 years of a certain lifestyle, set behaviors, set thinking patterns. I just got up and left. And I'm not a material person. I don't get attached to things. There's things in this world are replaceable. So I get up and go anyway, because I know they're going to be provided for again and again and again. I've always been provided for. Not to say that I have riches or an inheritance, I definitely didn't come from fame, I did come from, the low middle class. And it was just taking on that courage and that boldness and that bravery, no matter how afraid I was to leave, just getting up and going. Not knowing where I was going, but I figured it out along the way because I trusted the process. And I'd made the best decisions with each step. And I'd held no shame or guilt in my choices.
And what is one piece of advice that you could give to someone to live into that definition of being a warrior?
I would say it'd be ask for help.
Yeah.
Do not be afraid to ask for help.
That's key, for sure. Wow, we went through a lot. I think that this was a very powerful episode. Anyone that is listening that is going through any sort of major or really any sort of life transition, I think you can find value in this. I think, like we've talked about many times in the past, trauma is in a lot of ways inevitable. There are these life stressors, there are these things. It's a matter of equipping ourselves with the right ways to navigate them in the most healthy of ways. And that's why we're so blessed to be able to have so many voices that just break this down in a way that navigates people. So thank you so much for being on. One of the things that we like to do at the end of all of our episodes, you'll have a chance here in a minute to talk about how people can work with you and where they can find you, but is to leave some space for you to maybe talk about things that you didn't get to talk about. Obviously, in anticipation of being on the podcast, there might have been some things that you had in your mind that you want to talk about. And so if we didn't get to talk about it, it didn't come up in natural conversation, we try to save some space. So if there's anything you want to talk about or bring up or mention, now's a great opportunity for you to do that.
I feel like I covered everything.
Yeah, I think we definitely went through a lot, and I think that it was
we took a deep dive.
It's going to make for a great opportunity to serve others in this, using this platform. So speaking of that, how can people find you? How can people work with you?
So my website's my name, jennifertidwell.com. You can find all my other links on there at the top menu to all my other social media sites and other things. It is a blog site, so I do blogs, and the links are tied to other resources. I am venturing out this year to speaking engagements in groups, large groups, ministries, shelters, churches, anywhere in the U.S.
Awesome.
So if there's any group that's listening, a group leader that's listening, and you feel this story would be beneficial to your people, then you can contact me through my website.
Yep. And we'll put
I'll be happy to, and I'll be happy to speak with you, and let's get a date and time and work together and put this mission out, start helping people.
Absolutely. So I normally finish our episodes kind of with like a final thought, but I think that there's been so much powerful conversation during this. I want to kind of save that space for you to maybe end us with just a final note to kind of take us home. Something, about just the transformation of trauma to thriving that you've experienced, or some hope for people that are listening.
So because of the trauma of my life and witnessing it from many others, everyone has some kind of trauma. I've learned that the impossible is possible. And what you really want to make happen is up to you, nobody else.
So true.
Perfect.
You get to choose your path and journey from this day forward. You can stay in the trauma, the past, the victim mentality, or you can choose to move forward and start your healing process. And don't be afraid of it. And my final word to that regarding fear, if you're moving in a direction in your life that you know will bring you good, and you immediately start being afraid, you might be going in the right direction. So go after it with courage, bravery, and trust.
Hey Warriors, it's Michael, and I want to thank you for listening to the Warrior of Impact podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to us on your favorite streaming platforms and leave us a 5-star review. For more information, check out warriorofimpact.com. If you're thinking about suicide, or worried about a friend or loved one, or would like the emotional support, The crisis hotline is available 24/7 all across the United States. 1-800-273-8255. Again, if you need the help or someone to talk to, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is available 24/7. If you are a victim of domestic violence, or if you are in a situation where you do not feel safe, help is available. You can speak with somebody today. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, available 24/7. 1-800-799-7233, or text START to 88788.